How was it? Was it challenging for you?
Definitely, because as a fashion designer, that's really what you should be doing is fashion, right?
Yes.
And you should leave the books and everything else to other people. But when you open a business, you're the person who does the buying, you're the person who does you look at the books, and if the accounts make sense, you're stocking, you're restocking, you're trying to figure out, should I take all these profits and run, or do I pour them right back into the business and have them grow? So it was one of those very multifaceted jobs, and I say was because I decided, okay, what am I good at? I'm good at spotting the designs, making them, and then just handing them over to an entity that can do the selling. So that's how Bold was introduced, Bold in Africa. And so we're there, if you're ever looking for some really great pieces. And I really do try and source for pieces that you will not find anywhere else. Just, if I'm in a country somewhere, let's say Mali, and I see fabric that's traditional to Mali, I'll try and bring that. If it's, traditional to like Adire, which is a hand-printed indigo that I just fell in love with and made literally everything indigo. At some point, my sisters were like, there are other pieces of clothing to wear. So I fell in love with that. And so that's the thing, is that you want to be able to present culture within fashion and also pushing for sophistication and also pushing for business, right? For profit. And so finding all those healthy balances, for me, I just chose to be more like the designer and let other people handle the logistics. Yeah.
So are you still in journalism, doing what you were doing before? Have you pivoted from that?
Yes, there's less intensity.
Okay.
I used to do a considerable amount of traveling and a lot of storytelling, which I miss, and what you slowly start to realize is the person who's in the village in Arua shares the same struggles as the person who's in, a slum in Gwagwalada, for example, which is,
Where's that?
It's right outside of Lagos.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I think it's like where WizKid comes from, So, so you find that the struggles are pretty much the same, and so you don't feel so. I'm Ugandan, you're Nigerian, you're South African, you're Kenyan. You start to feel that we're really in this struggle together as Africans and share this unique experience of being African, and that we support each other now more than ever, I feel.
Okay. You said that, you admitted that you were a workaholic.
I have been known to be.
Are we working on that now?
We are.
Have we? I mean, because for many people, that's what happened with COVID-19. It was like, okay, even if I change a few things around, slow down here and there, I can still move forward.
Yes.
Yes. And
Crystal, finding balance for me is still a challenge.
Okay.
Yes, and it has cost me a lot of really great moments and memories with my family, because certain things are happening and then you're called away for work or you're not physically here to be able to experience, and that has been very difficult. And it's hard on your family when you have a traveling journalist. It's very difficult on your loved ones and people who are close, and also retaining those relationships and having people understand what it is that you do is it's asking a lot from them, and it's you asking a lot in terms of people being patient.
Right.
So I've scaled back considerably, but I still struggle with not being a workaholic. I find joy in work, but I know that there are other avenues.
The other things
the
that
other
you can
things
do
in life.
too.
Really, they are.
Okay.
They are.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what about on a personal level, handling the stress that comes with the job? I believe it can take a toll on you eventually. Did you ever feel like you're burnt out or you needed a break or something like that?
Absolutely. Because we used to cover some really, really tough stories. There was a time we went and covered, the missing girls, the Chibok girls.
Yes, yes.
And, you're just thrown into this story about these girls who have gone missing. And then you start meeting their families. And then you start sitting down with their mother. And their mother is telling you who their daughter is. And then you think that this daughter is in the hands of irresponsible armed vigilantes in an area that is unknown, that is forested. And all these stories you would think you would leave behind, but you start to get some form of secondary trauma because you take in, I mean, you'd be heartless to sit down with a mom who says she's missing her daughter who's been abducted, and that doesn't affect you.
In some way.
Or yes, or you know, a lot of child bride stories where you know that someone is too young to get married, and you're just covering the story and walking away from it, knowing that this child is going to get married to a man who's 30 and 40 years older than she is.
And there's nothing
you can do about it. And then, you know, when you cover conflict, conflict is very interesting because you're just going and going. But when you come back, you have to deal mentally with what has happened to you. So, how I dealt with it is you just have to be very frank with the fact that you do need help and that counseling really does help. Because if you're going to be in this, and this is a career path that you've chosen, you must, in parallel, attend to your mental health.
Okay.
It is non-negotiable. Otherwise, you'll burn out, you will not be effective, and it's a tough business.
Okay.
It's a tough business.
Is this something that is acknowledged and supported professionally?
I wouldn't say. I would not say.
So for most traveling journalists like yourself, you have to seek that on your own.
Totally. It has to be, it depends on what you can take, but you do walk away with post-trauma. You know, things happen. We are human. Your body absorbs it. You think you're fine. You're in work mode. But then, you know, you might go to bed and have night sweats and you don't understand why. Because, you know, your body's compassionate and your mind is compassionate and sees what's happening to people around you. And you're no different from those people. So how can you separate yourself from their pain, you know? And without sounding too melodramatic, it really does take a toll on you. You must attend to your mental health.
Was there any story that you remember that you covered that really, really affected you?
There are many. I will tell you one story, actually, sticking on this point of child brides. I remember we went to meet a young girl in an area called Suleja, just outside of Abuja city in Nigeria. And her father, they were a Muslim community, and her father was hell-bent on having her married at the age of 12. So we went to cover this story, and like I said, we had to walk away. And so I remember going back and just not being able to deal with it. So on my own, please don't tell anyone this story.
Okay.
On my own, I went back to the family and I negotiated with the dad that I'd put her in school on my own and re-enroll her, and that at the age of 18, once she's finished school and she's learned a craft, that she can follow through.
Then she can get
and
married.
It took a while of convincing, but we did convince him with the help of, you know, their local authorities, like the equivalent of our LCs, right?
Yes.
But this is me totally breaking the rules because you are not supposed to get involved. So I went in and we were able to get her in school, and then there was a tailoring element that she was going to walk through when she gets to the age of 16. And so, you know, I sort of monitor her progress from afar.
Okay.
But I couldn't let it go. Yes. I couldn't let it go. I was like, I couldn't, yes.
And her father agreed?
He agreed.
Okay.
Yes, with much persuasion.
Oh, well
and then, you know, there's a certain
done.
persuasion that gets people going.
I think I can imagine.
Yes, if you can imagine what that persuasion
was.
So,
That's lovely. How is she doing?
Well, she's doing really well. She's doing really well,
Okay.
yeah. Speaking for a friend. Speaking for...
Okay.
Speaking for a friend, yes.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a lot. And
Yeah.
people don't, I think, ever really think about that. They think
Yes.
you're just doing your job and you enjoying the
Yes.
whole traveling and, you know.
Yes, it's difficult to walk away. Well, I'm so glad that you brought this up because it then gave birth to a foundation that I began called Heyoka Africa, which really just means compassion towards Africa.
Okay.
And the foundation is really geared towards making sure that we are paying attention to certain pockets in our community that go unnoticed using the vehicle of communication.
Okay.
So say a community doesn't have a radio station. So you go and seed a community radio station
Okay.
and have it run with the community, with their music, their content, They're presenters, yes.
Okay.
And so that's the exciting thing about starting this foundation.
When did you start
So we started in 2018, and we've been rolling along slowly, taking at a snail's pace.
Okay.
But there is an initiative that we're kicking off in Kotido, where we hope to jumpstart this community initiative. We already started in parts of Arua, and the idea is, you know, with the vehicle of communication, it's so powerful as a media tool that you can misinform people and people run with that, or inform them and people run with that.
Yes.
So the idea is to provide really great content that is also quite truthful and based in integrity and really transforms communities, but without bringing an external influence. Let it be for the community, by the community, with community people.
Yes.
You know, now I'm really starting to sound like activist language.
No,
Don't you hate
but
that?
if we can come up with our own solutions,
Yeah, like,
they are the ones that will last.
Completely, yes. And so that's the big projection going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we support you?
Well, we are getting forums together, and at the moment we are in a big fundraising drive. We're crowdsourcing, and also I'm working very closely with a community in the U.S. that supports these kind of initiatives. And the idea is, once we establish, we meaning myself and ground teams that are in local communities, once we establish a framework, then we'll be able to have information that can be shared to the public. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I like something that you said, that, you know, there's so many stories out there, and especially with social media now, fake news is, I feel like people aren't paying attention to how dangerous it is. Maybe in the West, in other countries, they're like, yeah, we have to fight this. But even here, we see, whether it's just within WhatsApp groups, there's so much fake news out there. And as a journalist who's been, you know, trying to make sure you cover stories as accurately as possible, I mean, how do you feel about that? How do people navigate it?
It's a whole new world. It's a whole new world. Like recently, we're in the week where DMX died, right? So I post on Instagram and on Twitter, and I'm like, you know, this was a really great poet and entertainer, you know, rest in peace, DMX. And then his representative gets on Twitter and says, this man has not died yet. He's in a coma. Please, where's the hope? You know? And as a journalist, it was my responsibility to take it down
quickly.
Until we had a formal statement. And this is the thing, very little verification happens. And how do you control the Wild West that is the internet, you know? And now with all these deep states, and you can make images speak that never said the things that they said, it is a really, really difficult environment. And world over, you know, a lot of people who have created these platforms, especially social media platforms, are also really trying to deal with, what do we do when everyone has the freedom to say whatever they want to say, and it's believable, you know? You know, I don't know if you remember when the former president, Donald Trump, called Africa S-hole country. And people really believed that there was nothing in Africa because he said it, it's all over the internet. What possibly can come out of Africa? But, you know, there was, I love the retaliatory, you know, news that came out of Africa. They're like, wait a minute, just give us time.
Let's show you what we're about.
You know, you're buying cobalt from DRC. You're taking oil from Nigeria. You know, you're taking our diamonds from South Africa. Really, are we the ones doing badly? Is it our problem, or can we get some perspective? So there's just this unbridled information for everybody, and for we in Uganda, we do have the Uganda Communications Commission that is doing their best, but you also have microbloggers who run stories as fact.
I mean, you'll see a story that is completely fake, and it's on 10 different platforms, and you're like, what? Who
cross-checks? You know, you're just at the mercy of trying to get at the bottom of it. And it's tough for us because we as journalists always held the power, because we were on TV or on radio, and we told you what happened. And now,
and we know because we did ABCD.
We did the research. But now it's citizen journalism. Somebody with their camera will tell you what happened, if a flood is happening, or if there's great news somewhere, or if something has happened. The power is completely democratized.
Yeah.
Everyone can be a journalist. There's nothing absolutely unique or special. But it's just what type of story they're telling and in what angle.
True. As someone who started in media back in the day before social media, I feel like we were lucky enough to be
You're
able
showing
to...
my age. Oh my gosh.
What?
Before social media.
There was no
We embrace
I
it.
fought it for the longest time. I fought it until I was like, okay, this is part of the job. I have to give in.
Right.
But I remember we had the freedom to build our personalities, to make our mistakes without it being out there for the whole world to see. And now that's what we're seeing. So I feel like, you know, a lot of young journalists have to be so careful because whatever lives on the internet is not going away. Yes. So do you feel at any point that you also have to be very careful, because you talked about that post and you had to quickly take it down? Do you feel that, you know, in terms of even just your own branding, you have to be very careful about what you share?
Yeah, I think that's you bring up a really great point, is that we're no longer people with opinions, we're brands. And so is this brand relative? Can I say this without it taking me down? You know, there's this massive what they call cancel culture that's kind of taken over. You have to be hesitant or check in with a team just to have an opinion of 140 characters. So
I mean, it's a tricky one, because I see that some journalists now lead with their opinions. You'll even see it in their reporting style. You see it in the stories that they cover. And if you go back to the basic you know, tenets of journalism, you're supposed to be completely neutral. And I don't know. Do you see that?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the dark side of our industry. Journalists, local journalists especially, are not paid that well across the board, anywhere in the world. Whether you're working freelance or you're full-time, journalists are not necessarily the best income earners. We just do what we do for the passion. And it's very easy to get compromised by money. What we typically call brown envelopes. You know, somebody slips you cash to slant a story to keep things kosher and just, you know, calm. And it's very difficult because, as you know, we've not necessarily had the greatest reputation, but also journalists work really hard. And sometimes it's very difficult to see journalists in the press being oppressed by the police, because they feel that the oppression is justified because they feel like journalists slant stories. So it's a cyclical sort of symbiotic sickness that happens there. But great journalists just tell the story. That's it. And it doesn't pay that great, but it's passion.
Yes. Well, my dear, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
We're out of time. I can't believe we're out of time, and I feel like I have so much to ask you. But maybe you can just let us know how we can reach you on social media, where we can find you.
Yes. So as a journalist, I'm one of those people who I would rather people see my work rather than my my personal life. So if you go to YouTube, I'm all over YouTube. You can find me at Sophia Aniku. And you can find a lot of the work that we've been doing. I do dabble in all the other platforms, but YouTube is really the driving force for a lot of the work that I do professionally. But also, I need to thank you for coming to our Women's Forum. You came to an amazing platform that I'm hoping to grow.
Thank you for bringing us together.
So there are all these amazing women in media, and nobody gets to see these women or even understand what it is that they do. We're just always targets for cheap information in the newspapers, right? Or the tabloids. But it was the first time we had seen really amazing women working in this field of communications and journalism and media, and people creating their own content, such as yourself, producers and executive producers, and really people who are trying to expand this industry. And so I'm hoping that we can have more of those forums, and of course we'll be tweeting those things out, and I'll definitely tag you so that we can be stronger, more well-rounded women, as opposed to mini skirts and boobs, you know?
Thank you. We've come a long way from that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, any advice to people who are getting into media now?
Sure.
Yes, any advice?
Yes.
Especially if someone would like to be, you know, a journalist.
Yes. It's not for the faint. You know, you have to be extremely strong, and thick-skilled, but you also have to be talented. Okay. There is a wave that is going through the world where everybody wants to be seen and heard, regardless of what they're saying. So just have something fundamental that you want to say. Now, if you're entry level, know that it's going to be a long journey. You're going to have to constantly prove yourself as a talent. And there are going to be people who are so much more talented than you are. It's going to be a room full of talented people, and what makes you stick out? So you have to constantly evolve, understand what the trends are, be abreast on those trends, love them. But the number one lesson that I want to leave with somebody who wants to get into journalism, is in journalism, or in the media space, is no one's ever going to give it to you. Nobody is ever going to give it to you. You are going to need to upskill at every level, which means take that online course, find the money to invest in yourself. Even if it's like a 6-week course that you find online, do it. Be a reader, a lover of information. And you have to kind of like people. If you're not somebody who likes people, you know. And then, of course,
a good point.
Let me just speak to
the
superficial individual who, you know, just wants to be hyped and be seen. There's a place for you. You know, there is a place for you, but it will fizzle out. You know, you just have to, and go out and get it. You know, my first jobs, I took myself to these interviews. When you know, auditions happened, I didn't always get the auditions. I remember going to South Africa and being asked to be part of a really great event. And I remember telling my friends when I was leaving, my family, that, oh, I'll be back. By the way, I just might be living in South Africa from like next year. And then I didn't get the gig, and I came back and I was at Entebbe. No one could even pick me up from the airport. It was very embarrassing. Having hyped myself up, there are so many letdowns. You will have so many don't necessarily fall into your lap, but you have to be a go-getter. You have to put yourself in the forefront and almost take a beating for it, you know, because you're not tall enough, you're too tall, you're too pretty, you're too dark-skinned, you know, there's so much scrutiny. I remember sitting on a panel of 12 people, and their number one role was to critique what I looked like and whether I was appropriate for this particular position, you know, and that's what happens, because if you're a public figure and you're putting yourself out there, that's what you're saying, is that, chop me up, but get up, go after those opportunities, because they're there. And right now, Africa is the best place to be for content creation. Don't look anywhere else. We already have the landscapes, we have the people, we have the stories. You know, it's a matter of just getting, you know, you don't need to have a lot of equipment either. These days, you can have a phone and tell a story that can go viral and be around the world. And we're not looking for superstardom, we're just looking for authenticity. Just be yourself. That's the other thing. Be yourself. Wouldn't you agree that's a thing? Be yourself.
So important. It's so important, because how long can you keep up whatever facade?
That's right.
Yeah, how long can you do that?
You know, I mean, you can fake the accent. It's fine. It will get you at a certain level.
One day.
But I don't know if it's going to keep you here.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been such a blast. Thank you.
Lovely having you.
Thank you.